Mr. Minnick here. I'm about to explain how the demo program called 3 Steps executes. From my homepage in Unit 1, you too can click on this link right here, 3 Steps, which will bring up this web page right here. And I also recommend that you open up in a different browser window the project called 3 Steps right here. I'm going to do that in this browser window. I'm going to scroll down and show you that this is the interface that somebody would see when they execute this program. And this over here on the left is the code that they would potentially need to understand to get an A in this course. So here goes. Your first step of the programming process is to design the interface. So let's just pretend that you spent an hour putting in these objects like a label, LBL header right here, 3 labels, right, 3 buttons I should say, BTN step 1, BTN step 2, and BTN step 3. By the way, the prefix for buttons is BTN. And the prefix for a label that we saw up above here, LBL, lowercase. And this down here is yet another button, BTN clear, and yet another button here, BTN exit. Okay, the introduction to the rest of the characters in the play. These 3 things. These are labels, LBL step 1, 2, and 3. So putting this interface then aside, step 2 of the programming process would be to plan out what you want to happen when the customer or the user clicks the 5 buttons that are in this project. And right here I've already done the pseudocode. I've already planned the code. We want the phrase design the interface to show up when the corresponding button, BTN step 1, gets clicked, and so on. Those are the things that should happen. Now finally we are to the stage where you have to write code. So in the behind the scenes area that we will soon see when we open up the Visual Basic software, there's a place where you can type code. But it has to be organized logically. So take a look at this. I have the class called Form1. This whole thing is a class. Sorry everyone for that. Okay, so continuing, I have a bunch of things called methods inside here. I have this method. This is called BTN step 1 click. This method, the name of it is BTN step 2 click. And a third method, BTN step 3 click. The next one, BTN clear click. And finally, BTN exit click. So there are 5 methods within the whole window, and the name of each method comes after private sub. My students do not have to worry about everything that's in this big fat set of parentheses. You would never have to recite that on a quiz or a test or a worksheet or anywhere. So just kind of ignore that. That just has to be there. Now, notice I put these in order. I didn't have to do that. I could have put BTN step 3 click at the top and Visual Basic wouldn't care. But for humans that are planning to look at this, they do care. The order makes sense and helps you understand this. Okay, back to analyzing the code. So method 1 is kind of like a sandwich. We have a top bun and a bottom bun, and the meat is inside there. It's indented inside. The bun overhangs the meat. At least when some people make burgers, that's what they do. So the inside code is what's important here. And here's what happens. Joe Schmo comes along and clicks this button called step 1. Oh, by the way, pretend that these 3 labels are not there at the beginning of the program. Pretend that that's all invisible at the start. Okay, so Joe Schmo clicks the button called BTN step 1. So Visual Basic executes the BTN step 1 click method. And that means that VB executes the line of code that's inside there. In other words, the meat of the top bun and bottom bun there. This line of code now executes, and we, the programmers, have to predict what's going to happen. Well, the object that's being mentioned is LBL step 1. So something happens over here to LBL step 1. Does it change color? No. Does the text change? No. Look, dot visible equals true. In other words, it becomes visible, assuming that it was invisible before. So that's what happens when somebody clicks this button in this program. This corresponding label shows up. Can you predict what happens when somebody clicks this second button? Yes, Bryce. Go ahead, answer the question. What do you think happens when somebody clicks the BTN step 2? What happens, Bryce, when somebody clicks BTN step 2 on this interface? What does the behind-the-scenes code cause to happen? You can't hear it, but Bryce in this room, but Bryce just said label step 2 appears. Correct, Bryce? This shows up. Hey, what happens when BTN step 3 gets clicked? Cat? Yes, you couldn't hear that either, folks, at home, but write the code, and that whole button, that whole label itself shows up. So including the purple background that she might have put there as the back color, it all shows up. So look at that magic. Because of this code right here, this button makes this show up. Because of this code here, this button makes this show up. And because of this code, third chunk of code, the third method as we call it, this final third label shows up to the right. Now the tricky one. Who can tell me what happens when somebody clicks the button that happens to have the word clear here? Tyler? All the labels become invisible. Correct. Which pretty much means that they clear out. Because this triple decker sandwich here, inside the top bun and the bottom bun of the method called BTN clear click, all three of these lines of code all execute in order, first, second, and third, although it all happens so quickly, a human being thinks that they're all done simultaneously. But let's analyze it closely. LBL step 1 dot visible equals false. Okay, that means this label kind of goes invisible. The second line of code over here, LBL step 2 dot visible equals false. That makes this label go away a split second later. And LBL step 3 dot visible equals false. That makes the third label here go invisible again. Well, Joe Schmo could come back later and click on any one of these buttons in any order to make them reappear, and this might keep somebody happy. For a Governor Mifflin student could find this very fun for his whole evening. Clicking these three buttons and watching these things appear, clicking the clear and making them go away. That could be actual fun game for some people. Maybe even a Wilson student would want to do that. Well, a Why I'm Missing student that's in this classroom, somebody now needs to tell me what happens when somebody clicks this fifth button right here. Guy with his hand up, also known as John. Yep, the whole program ends because this button was named BTN exit. I found its corresponding BTN exit click method right here, and the one and only line of code in there says application.exit. So the whole program ends and closes up on the person's home computer. Congratulations, we have now analyzed demo program 1. But I'm going to show you mistakes that will happen by one or more people in this room. If I allowed you to type this code into Visual Basic and first plan and design the interface and then type the code, here are the kinds of things that beginners do wrong. Well, first of all, they make compile mistakes. Where they mean to type visible equals true, they sometimes put like 2 S's in there. Well, the program won't even run if that happens. So you got to fix your spelling of these keywords like visible, private sub, end sub, and all that. Another mistake somebody's likely to make this school year. Somebody does not carefully name their objects. They name something BTN step 1 instead of step 2. In other words, they have like 2 BTN step 1s. Well, that would be a compile error, and the computer wouldn't even run this program. Now, some people, they name this one BTN step 1, but this object, they accidentally name it BTN step 2. So there isn't a double of anything, and this actually does not stop the program from running. This is a logic mistake. Somebody out loud tell me what predicted output, what would happen during runtime if some haphazard student just nonchalantly typed in BTN step 2 there, thinking, oh, I'm a pretty good programmer, I'm going to do this really fast. Then they put BTN step 1 for this one. What would go wrong? Yes, Patrick.
The label, play with code, and design the interface would switch.
Yeah. In other words, they wouldn't really switch. The wrong one would become visible at the wrong time. So if somebody clicked this one would become visible. Because in BTN step 2, it's LBL step 2 that becomes visible. So this one would match up with this one, and that's not what the programmer intended. And of course, it's kind of okay because then the same mistake occurs when somebody clicks here, this one shows up. But they wouldn't show up in the right matching relationship, so that could confuse people, or they could demand their money back if they paid for this program. So that's a logic mistake. Let me think, are there other mistakes that people make? Oh, some people, they rearrange the order of these 3 lines of code. What kind of mistake would that be? And if it is, what kind of, what would go wrong when we run the program or try to run the program? If these 3 visible falses in the clear click method were put in the wrong order. Good answer. Nobody said anything. Good answer. Because it really doesn't matter what order these are in. Because the computer runs this code so quickly, nobody will see these 3 things become clear out in the wrong order. It just happens simultaneously because of how fast Visual Basic executes this code. I would have a problem with style, the style of it. Why would you not put things in a 1, 2, 3 order when you could, even if it doesn't have any wrong output? So I might take a half point off just because you have bad style, but it really would not be a compile error, and it really wouldn't be any kind of logic or runtime error in the code. Hey, what if somebody in their code did not type these nice little comments right here above every private sub? Would that cause an error of some kind, like compile or a runtime error? Good, there's no answer because that would not cause the program not to run. In other words, these little comments that start with apostrophes here, they're only there for other humans to see. It would not affect the way this program runs. Although I would take a point off if you handed this code in, because now it's harder for me to analyze this code. I don't have that nice little explanatory comment explaining the purpose of each corresponding method. What if somebody misspelled the word interface when they created this label? Would that cause the program to crash? No, it wouldn't. It's just, again, the person would lose a point for bad spelling on the interface of the program when it runs for the customer. People probably would stop buying their program because it just has grammar and spelling mistakes, but it wouldn't prevent the program from running. Okay, best of luck with this program. Oh, wait, I want to throw in one more thing here. This L is underlined here, and the X is underlined. And same for these digits. When somebody runs this program, instead of clicking, they can actually hold down the Alt key on the keyboard and strike the letter L. And that would be the same thing as clicking this clear button. Alt L, Alt X, Alt 1, 2, and 3 are just optional, a second way of doing the same thing, way of accessing this. Some people don't like their mouse. They don't hook the mouse up to the computer, or they lose their mouse, or their mouse glitches. So they could hold down the Alt and strike these individual letters. We will learn later how to underline one letter at a time on buttons. Okay, have a good day.